Welcome back to the Mold Safe Home Build channel. I'm Dr. Karen Curitin, a specialist in helping people heal from mold illness and nervous system dysregulation. And this channel is all about sharing my journey with you to building a mold safe home. In part one and two of this series, I shared about why we chose to live full-time RV life while building our mold safe home, which RV we chose for mold avoidance, where we've been living, and all the benefits of RV life. If you missed those, definitely go back and watch them because I shared a lot of information there I won't be covering in this video. So I'll link to those videos so you can watch those as well. This video is all about the downsides or cons of living full-time RV life for mold avoidance from our experience. And yes, there are quite a few, but if you watched my other videos, you'll know that at the end of the day, it has facilitated my continued healing from our last big exposure in our house, and it has allowed us to quickly move on to building a mold-safe home for ourselves. And those were our two biggest goals. So, have the crappy parts of our RV life been worth it? Yeah, my husband and I both agree that they have been. That doesn't mean they haven't been hard. Okay, but without further ado, let's talk about them. Let's talk about the cons of living RV life in general and for mold avoidance. So, con number one is if you have a crisis on the road, it feels a lot more intense than a crisis at home. And it's just generally harder to manage because of the constant movement and not having all the resources you're used to at home. So, let me tell you a little story to illustrate what I mean. And if you are, still very sick as you start doing RV life, then managing a crisis will also be harder because you're sick, right? So, here's the story. Shortly after we started Row Life, I got a C. diff infection, and all three of our dogs got a very similar diarrheal pathogen, like really severe one. So we were all having severe diarrhea day and night, except for my husband. And some of the places that we were staying didn't have emergency vets, and there was no availability even at the normal vet clinics. Like we were in a small town when this hit. And so we had to drive 3 hours in the middle of the night for urgent vet care one time. And the pathogen that our dogs had actually was so severe that it actually led to the death of our beloved older dog. And that was just absolutely crushing. And it was just really hard to go through amidst getting used to the different challenges of RV life, I would say. And when you live in a small RV, your dog is going to be in the same room as you, right? Our RVs are small enough that there's only one room. And so if they need to go out 4 times a night, you're going to be getting up, leashing them up, and walking them in the middle of the night. There's no doggy door for them to help themselves, and you don't have a yard. So that's how it was for us for several weeks. So we were incredibly sleep deprived as we were just getting started in RV life. And then we were deeply grieving the loss of our dog, and the whole ordeal was totally overwhelming. The other tricky thing is that when somebody on the road is sick, dog or human, you can't always stay in one place to ride it out, right? Or to just rest if that's what you need at that time. Like your reservation where you're staying might be ending, and then maybe they don't have availability for you to stay any longer. So you have to get on the road and get to your next destination, wherever you have a reservation, or book a last minute hotel room or something. And so that can be really hard when you're in the middle of something really going wrong. We also had a terrible crisis with one of our trucks very early on, which was being used for towing one of our two travel trailers. It completely broke down after it had some severely botched mechanical work done, completely broke down in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. And the error the mechanic made was so catastrophic that it's still being repaired. Gosh, I think it's been 6 months now, maybe 5 months, something like that. It's been a long time and it still hasn't been fixed. So, needless to say, we had to buy a new truck early on in road life, and that was also a crazy crisis to deal with. So, anyways, crises can be a lot harder to manage when you don't have a stable home. Con number two of RV life, there maybe more interruptions to sleep, especially if you're a light sleeper or you don't like to wake up early. Like I said, if you have pets in your trailer, they can be part of why it's more disturbed. But other things about RV life too can be pretty noisy. So this goes for both noise inside the RV, if, your partner sleeps with you or your kids or whatever, because there's really no sound insulation inside RVs. It's kind of crazy. There's almost none. It's terrible. At least the ATC RVs that we toured, that was the case. Even if you have separated rooms in the RV, there's no soundproofing. So whatever's happening in the living room, you're probably going to hear most of it in the bedroom. Um, and actually, I think ATC RVs make outside noises louder inside. So if you step outside, you hear the noise, you're like, oh, that's pretty quiet. It's not bad. You step in back inside, you're like, whoa, that's really loud. So that's happened to us at a few places where people were playing music outside or something, and it was like so loud inside. And I was like, this is bizarre. How can they be playing music this loud at 10 p.m.? Turned out it wasn't that loud outside, but for some reason the RVs were amplifying it inside. So, noise outside from other RVers is going to be more of a problem in a place where other RVers are coming and going a lot. So, this is mostly the case for places that are more considered campgrounds, like KOAs or state parks, because people there are just taking vacation, right? So, they're usually only there for a few days, maybe maximum of a week. And so lots of people are at those campgrounds waking up early at 6 a.m., packing up and getting on the road. And usually they make quite a racket when they do that. And so you are probably going to have a neighbor doing that at least 3 or 4 times a week. So if you're not an early riser, that can be more of an issue. Um, there are also more kids at traditional campgrounds, so there can be more screaming outside and whatnot. Um, at RV parks or resorts, that doesn't tend to be an issue in my experience. People are usually staying 1 to several months at a time. Most of them are older people over 65. They're pretty quiet. They go to bed early. They don't play a lot of music. There's just generally not a lot of noise at night or in the mornings. So those are the places we stay now, and we don't have much sleep disruption anymore from neighbors. When it rains really hard and it's super loud in the trailer. So you probably will not be able to sleep through it. So just FYI, it's like sleeping in a tin can when you're in an ATC. Also, when it's windy, it shakes the whole trailer. And this is more so the case if your awning is out because it acts like a sail. But even if your awning is in, wind can really shake the trailer quite a lot, we find. And so that's another thing that can disturb sleep if you're a light sleeper. So just know about those things. But overall, I want to report that my sleep is actually a lot better now most of the time than it was in my house. As soon as we switched to RV life, I started sleeping a lot better, other than these little disruptions that could happen in certain situations. Okay, con number three. For us, it has been really lonely, RV life. Not having friends, family, or community around us anywhere we are, it's been hard. Everyone we meet is new, and most of them are dramatically older than us, usually over 65, because that's mostly who else is doing full-time RV life and staying at these RV parks. So that's something to consider. If you're staying more at campgrounds, you probably will see younger people, but probably most of them are just going to be there for a very short time. So again, yeah, there's not a lot of a community feel or not much feeling of support from anyone other than your travel partner when you're doing full-time RV life. That's been our experience. I will say we've met some very friendly people on the road, but they're temporary friends, right? Con number four, laundry can be a pain. And I'm going to speak about this specifically from the lens of mold avoidance, okay? You can't control the chemical or mold and mycotoxin exposure that your clothes are going to get at laundromats. Most people who are doing full-time RV life are washing their clothes at the laundromats at the RV parks or other public laundromats. And washing machines, especially the front loaders that are often the choice at the public laundromats, can really have a significant mold and mycotoxin problem, and that transfers to your clothes. And so we have not been using the laundromats. We've actually been doing laundry by hand. And we started out air drying it, which worked pretty well most of the time, but obviously it can take a while and it's a bit of pain in that regard. We don't have like 10 lines we can dry on. We can do one line at a time. And so, yeah, it can be time consuming and take a lot longer. Then we got a mini dryer. And we actually, it's the dryer is so small, it's easy for me even to pick up and take in and out of the RV. And so on a laundry day, we just put it outside the vent that's venting all of the humid air out of the dryer, just vents outside, not into the RV. So we're not increasing humidity inside. Our RVs are too small travel trailers. We don't have room for a washing machine in our trailer. Some bigger models do. But we probably wouldn't have done that anyway because it just increases the chance of a water event. And we really wanted to have this time in RV life be a time of mold avoidance, right? And so we wanted to avoid water damage wherever possible. But it's up to you. You could have a small mini RV washer if you have a larger RV. But those are usually front loaders as well, and they can all grow mold. So we're using a Wonder Washer, which is a specific kind of hand crank washer that does small loads of laundry. It's big enough to even do a twin size comforter. And so it's really met all of our needs. It's just a pain in terms of it takes longer. It can only do small loads, all that kind of stuff. So laundry is more time consuming. It's something you get to add to your schedule in a way that you didn't have to when you owned a washing machine at home. So, con number five, if you're not using air conditioning like us because you don't want the chance of it creating a mold issue in your RV, it can get too hot at times. And so, yeah, we haven't been using our air conditioner even though both of our units have them. And that's because in both of our last two homes, the most significant source of mycotoxins was our air conditioner, both times. And the last exposure that we had, which you've probably heard me talk about in some of the other videos, was probably the worst one I've ever had when I did testing uh, on my body. 14 out of 14 of those mycotoxins were at really high levels and showing active current exposure. So, yeah, it was bad. And that was from air conditioning. So, we haven't been using ours. What we've been doing is following the weather, basically looking at past weather trends. And I think I'm going to make another video where I talk about some of these good to know things. But we looked at past weather trends through timeanddate.com, where we could look at exactly what the temperatures were every day of every month. And we would do that for the last 3 years because we found the averages that were over longer periods of time were not accurate because of climate change. So we looked at time and date, and we've been basically selecting locations where the highs average between 65 and 80 Fahrenheit, and the lows are averaging between 35 at the lowest and up to 60. And so we've been pretty successful at following that only in the very beginning of our trip when my husband had to get his truck, had to get some mechanical work done. That was the only time where we weren't able to follow the good weather and we had to stay somewhere where it was really hot. And so not using air conditioning in that situation was pretty hard. But since we're in the desert with low humidity and we're following the optimal temperature range throughout the seasons, it's actually pretty comfortable most of the time. I would say it's very comfortable most of the time. And the other huge pro of doing RV life in the desert is that it always gets cold at night in the desert. So we're always comfortable at night. The temperature always drops enough that we're not hot or sweaty at night. I think you're starting to get the picture that I am pretty obsessed with getting good sleep. And so, yeah, I love that it gets really cold at night in the desert and it facilitates good sleep. Okay, con number six. Humidity can get really high in the trailers when it's raining outside. So a dehumidifier is warranted at those times, but otherwise we never need dehumidifiers in our space. It has rarely rained in most of the locations we've been in because we've been in desert and high desert locations. But it does rain. And sometimes it rains for days at a time. And those are the times when it can get really humid inside the RV, especially because you're generating humidity in the RV all the time anyway. And in these ATC RVs, they've used the style of ceiling fans that turn off automatically when it rains. So they don't actually have a very good, well-designed rain cover. And so they have to close if it rains, which means nothing is pulling humid air out while it's raining. So that was a poor design. I wish that they had put in better fans because there are definitely better fans that can still run in rainy weather. But we've almost never had condensation inside the trailers. And that that was even the case without dehumidifier use. So another pro to following desert weather, many RVs and probably ATC RVs included really struggle with a lot of humidity inside and condensation, especially if they can't open up their windows because it's way too cold or way too hot outside, or because it's really humid outside because you're not in a desert. So I think it's worked out really well, and we haven't had any issues with a lot of humidity or condensation, which can be a problem for mold growth. Con number 7 to RV life. It can be expensive, a lot of work, and feel really stressful to move frequently. You're not required to move frequently. But when we first started this lifestyle, we were moving frequently because we had not booked campsites far enough in advance to get monthly rates. And we thought it might be fun to see a bunch of interesting places. But with the newness of the transition to RV life and my husband still working completely full-time, normal hours without much flexibility, it was actually really stressful for us to move regularly. Breaking down and setting up the RV each time you move can be a decent amount of work. And it takes a day or two to really feel settled in each new place, to know what the gate codes are, if there's a gate, or bathroom codes, or where to pick up your mail and packages, to get connected to their internet and to find the best grocery store, etc. Right? So often we got to new sites. Has happened to us multiple times that when we got there, we realized, oh, this site is too small, or it's really not going to work for us for some reason. And like we couldn't get Starlink to work, which we need for work because there was too much tree cover, for instance. And so oftentimes we would have to go to the front office and request to change sites. And we never got there early enough to do it the day of. So we'd have to stay in one site overnight and then move again the next day. And so, yeah, it can take a few days to get settled in each new site. So after the first few months of moving around a lot, we decided we much prefer to stay in each place for at least a month at a time. And we've also saved a lot of money and stress that way. And it's made working from the road a lot easier. So you can decide what works for you, but for us, that was not worth the stress, and we highly recommend staying at places with monthly rates, staying longer periods of time. Con number 8, it's not very comfortable, at least the way we've done it. We don't have any real furniture, and actually, ATC RVs have pretty crappy, uncomfortable furniture anyway. We didn't even get any of their furniture because it was so uncomfortable. We did get their tables, but not anything to sit on. And so we basically decided we were just going to get cheap temporary stuff until we have a house again. So our experience of RV life has not been very comfortable. When we get a virus or whatever and we've got to just hang out in the RV and relax or whatever, well, it's not so cozy. It's not quite as relaxing as it was when we had a house and real furniture that was comfortable. Okay. Con number 9, getting prescriptions is tricky. Um, my husband has had to change providers several times because he's taking a controlled substance and his prescribers could only prescribe that in the state where they were currently licensed, and that's not where we were because we're moving around. And so he had to actually find new prescribers in different states to keep getting refills. And if you're on any compounded medication, such as like you're taking compounded cholestyramine or a nasal spray or something to help you heal from mold, compounding pharmacies are also only allowed to ship to states they're licensed in. So one of the coolest things about compounding pharmacies is that they'll ship to you, but they can only ship to states where they're licensed. So if you're in a different state at the time, you're going to have to get your provider to call in a prescription to a compounding pharmacy in the state where you are. So it can just be a bit more of a hassle to keep getting your prescriptions. Con number 10, and this is specifically for those wanting to build a home or buy another home while living RV life. Any debt that you carry on the RV or the truck is going to lower your borrowing capacity for the land or construction loan or mortgage you want to apply for. So budget that in. Think about that. How expensive of a house do you want to buy next or build? And make sure you're going to be able to qualify for that before you take on the loan of an RV. Con number 11, taking care of dogs is harder without a yard. Some of you probably live in apartments and are like, yeah, duh, but that's the same as an apartment. Well, we've been spoiled for a little bit by having a house and having a yard and just being able to let them do their business out in the backyard unattended. But, living RV life, every time they have to potty, we gotta leash them up, take them for a walk. We have to facilitate all the exercise that they get. Our dogs used to just basically run themselves out in the backyard, and now we have to do that. And so it's something to factor in, especially if you are sick and you don't have a lot of energy. It's going to be a little bit more energy to take care of your animals in RV life. Con number 12, things in RVs break all the time. At least in our ATC RVs, they do. These are the first RVs we've ever owned. We actually converted a short school bus into a camper previously, and that was its own headache for different reasons, but it was actually much more durable than these ATC RVs in some ways. But yeah, things have been breaking from the day we picked them up, and repairs are tricky to arrange when you live in the RV full time. So we had several things wrong with the RVs from day one. Some of them were not discovered on inspection because they were, well, frankly, I think ATC should have tested them and discovered them, but they didn't, and we didn't because we didn't know to check some of these things. And more issues have developed continuously over time. None of them are catastrophic. None of them have led to water damage, but they still need to be fixed. So we've been trying to get them fixed for months. And ATC expects warranty repairs to be done in a shop. And my husband actually had a larger repair that they thought needed to be done. And so he had to go to an RV shop. The closest one was 2 hours away that knew how to work with ATC trailers. And so we had to stay in a hotel while they waited to receive parts for that repair. The parts never came. 2 entire weeks in a hotel went by 2 hours away from me and where we were supposed to be staying. Luckily, ATC paid for the hotel and the travel time, but I think that that is not standard practice. So I would not count on it. My husband had to fight for it. Usually you have to foot the bill. So that's obviously really not going to work in for most people living full-time RV life. And because it was such a clusterfuck, we are now working to get the repairs done with a mobile mechanic, which is a mechanic that will do the repairs right where you are currently living. ATC will not pay for the mobile mechanic to come and visit you, but they will pay for the repairs under warranty. So fingers crossed, we're actually able to get those done soon. We've learned the hard way that mobile mechanics are definitely the way to go when you're living in your RV full time, but mobile mechanics might not be available in smaller towns and more remote locations. We looked for mobile mechanics in some of our previous locations, and they were available and with good reviews and stuff like that in some locations, and in other locations, we couldn't find anybody. All right, con number 13. You cannot control your smoke or EMF exposure. So, this is a shout out to those of you who are really chemically sensitive or really EMF sensitive. I am neither of those things, so it hasn't been a big problem for me, but I do like to reduce my exposure to chemicals and EMFs as much as possible, but hasn't been possible with RV life. So you just don't have control over what your neighbors are doing. So, story from just this past weekend, actually. Um, the place where we're staying right now has a combination of like these park model, like cabin type things that people own, and also some RV lots. And so I'm in an RV lot that's between two park model cabins. And the owners of one of the park model cabins arrive this weekend and they realize, like, oh, we've got a bunch of weeds that have grown up in between our pavers on the side of our park model, on the side right next to my RV, literally about 8 feet from my RV. And I watch them get out their Roundup and just their glyphosate, just start spraying that all over everything. And they spray everything like multiple times. And then I see the woman and she's like, huh, look, she looks in the bottle and there's still quarter or half of the bottle still left. And so she just takes the sprayer off and goes and pours it, just pours it on the pavers right next to my RV. And I was like, great. Okay. I obviously closed up my windows on that side, but obviously it's not ideal. You're much, much closer to your neighbors, and they will do all kinds of things that might trigger whatever you have going on. So, I didn't have any symptoms from that, but I was not happy about it. So, if you're at campgrounds like KOAs or state parks or things like that, a lot of people love to make campfires, right? Because they're having a camping vacation, right? They're not doing daily RV life. This is my home. They want the experience of going camping. So, if you stay at those kinds of places, and you're going to be exposed to a lot of campfires. And a lot of people also like to cook outside with charcoal and smoke cigars, sometimes cigarettes, although that hasn't been super common, but definitely cigars. And RVs are not airtight. So some of that will get inside your RV, even if your windows are closed. And your neighbors are often very close to you. So the smoke may be very close by. Sometimes our entire trailers have been full of smoke, have just felt really smoky from a nearby neighbor's campfire. So if you're super sensitive to smoke, I just want you to know that. Some places we stay have really horrific Wi-Fi that really doesn't work at all and doesn't even reach your site. So in those cases, EMF exposure from the park itself will be low. Other places, like the one we're staying now, have Wi-Fi boosters like every 3 or 4 sites. So exposure can be really high. And neighboring RVers can also have their own Starlink or Wi-Fi. And so you could have a lot of different sources of exposure pretty nearby. And you might think that being built of metal, that ATC trailers would work like Faraday cages and protect you from EMFs outside. That's not the case. They are definitely not. EMF levels can get really high inside. And so wherever you're parked will dictate how that goes for you. So for those of you who are really EMF sensitive, you might want to visit a park in advance to see what the level of exposure is like, but also know that it may change based on who your neighbors are. Even people just camping can have their own sources of Wi-Fi, like Starlink. The good news is that the ATC model that we have does not have any smart features. So there are no Bluetooth or Wi-Fi controls for the RV or monitoring gauges. They're all wired. And that's not the case for some of their models. So if you're considering doing this, you'll want to ask them what's available on the models that you're interested in. But yeah, we don't have any EMF exposure from the trailer itself in terms of radio frequencies. Those are all the downsides that I could think of to write down for you guys. I'm sure that there are a lot more. And if I miss some and you guys are doing RV life and you want to note some more in the comments, please do that. So everybody who watches this really gets the best picture possible of what the downsides are of this lifestyle. It's not perfect, but it is a potential avenue to you being able to heal from toxic mold exposure if you get the right kind of RV and you use it appropriately to avoid any mold issues developing in the RV. So that's why I'm making these videos. I want people to know that it's an option, but also to know that there's some great parts about it and some really crappy parts about it. And you've got to be okay with both if you're going to do this. But you do have choices in terms of where you stay, how often you move, what your exposures might be, and all kinds of other stuff. So, if it's something you want to do, find a way to do it that works well for you. That's all of my cons. I think I'm probably going to do a next video where I talk about things that I wish we had known before doing RV life, things that nobody tells you about RV life or that you would really have to do some research to find out. And so That's what I'll work on for the next video. But for now, if this video was helpful to you, please like, subscribe, leave me a comment. If you know someone else who's being poisoned by their home and might want to learn about healing through living RV life, please share this video with them. And if you need some help healing from mold illness or nervous system dysregulation, you can find some links below to work with me on that. All right, I will catch you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.